أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصل يا رب على محمد وأهل بيته الأطيبين الأطهرين. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله، هذا الزمان يا حجة الله في أرضه، يا أمير المؤمنين، يا صاحب الأمر، يا سيدي ومولاي وربي وإلهي. سلام عليك، سلام عليك يا سيدي. من البث المقيم للصراط المستقيم يحييكم أخوكم عبد الله، ويقرأ على حضراتكم ما يقوله صاحب الأمر، ربكم وإمام زمانكم. البث المقيم للصراط المستقيم هو البث المرتبط ارتباطا مباشرا بأمير المؤمنين، هو الصراط المستقيم، والذي نقوله الآن، على الأقل الآن يعني، نقوله عنه صلوات الله والسلام عليه بواسطة واحدة. لا إله إلا الله، نعم، لا إله إلا الله، لأنه ليس غيره يعرف ما يفعل وما سيفعل. لا إله إلا الله، نعم، لا إله إلا الله، لأنه ليس غيره أو ليس غيره يعرف ما يفعل وما سيفعل وما فعل، وهو لا ينسى، وهو لا ينسى. وما كان ربك نسيا، وما كان ربك نسيا. وما كان ربك نسيا، هذه الآية 64 من سورة مريم المباركة. مريم المباركة والسورة مباركة. أعيد قراءة ما تقدم. لا إله إلا الله، نعم، لا إله إلا الله، لأنه ليس غيره يعرف ما يفعل وما سيفعل. ليس غيره يعرف ما يفعل وما سيفعل في المستقبل، يعني سيفعل سين للمستقبل القريب، لا أقول سوف، لأنه ليس غيره يعرف ما يفعل. يفعل فعل مضارع مستمر، وما سيفعل في المستقبل القريب، وما فعل وما فعل، وهو لا ينسى، وهو لا ينسى، لقوله جل وعلا وما كان ربك نسيا. هذه الآية 64 من سورة مريم المباركة، صلوات الله وسلامه على مريم وآلها. لكن الناس تنسى. الناس تنسى. نعمة النسيان مهمة، نعمة النسيان مهمة. لأنك إن لم تنسى ستحمق ولا يمكن أن تستمر على هذه الحالة وأنت حينما تحمق. لكن الناس تنسى. نعمة النسيان مهمة، نعمة النسيان مهمة، لكن الناس تنسى. لأنك إن لم تنسى ستمحق ولا يمكن والحالة هذه أن تستمر. عندما قلنا أن أطلس 3I هو مركبتنا الفضائية، ضحك الكثير. ليس لأنهم عاقلون، لا، بل لأنهم عاقلون، بل لأنهم جاحدون، وليس لأنهم يفهمون، بل لأنهم حمقى. أعان الله خلقه في كل الأرض. التغيير يأتي من الداخل ليس من الخارج. عندما قلنا أن أطلس 3I هو مركبتنا الفضائية، ضحك الكثير. نعم، ضحك الكثير، والبعض ما زال يضحك، ليس لأنهم عاقلون بل لأنهم جاحدون، وليس لأنهم يفهمون بل لأنهم حمقى، وليس لأنهم عباقرة بل لأنهم يقيدون الله تعالى وخليفته بعقولهم التافهة. التغيير يأتي من الداخل وليس من الخارج. لا يغير الله ما بقومين، ما في داخلهم، يعني لا يغير الله ما في قوم حتى لا يغير الله ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. عندما قلنا أن أطلس 3I هو مركبتنا الفضائية، ضحك الكثير. نعم، ضحك الكثير، والبعض ما زال يضحك، ليس لأنهم عاقلون بل لأنهم جاحدون، وليس لأنهم يفهمون بل لأنهم حمقى، وليس لأنهم عباقرة بل لأنهم يقيدون الله تعالى وخليفته بعقولهم التافهة، وليس لأنهم لا يقبضون ما لا يلمسون ويرون بل لأنهم فاقدون لأبسط أسس الإيمان بالغيب، يعني معوقون. أكرر الكلام، وليس لأنهم عباقرة بل لأنهم يقيدون الله تعالى وخليفته بعقولهم التافهة، وليس لأنهم لا يقبضون ما لا يلمسون ولا ويرون، بل لأنهم فاقدون لأبسط أسس الإيمان بالغيب، بمعنى أنهم معوقون. الكافر بوجود الله ليس فاهما، بل هو معوق، بل هو معوق، لأنه ينقصه شريحة في عقله. شايف الشريحة هاي مال الديجيتال أو الشريحة هاي اللي تخليها بالموبايل؟ الكافر بوجود الله ليس فاهما، بل هو معوق، لأنه ينقصه شريحة بين هلالين معقوفتين في عقله تقول ما لا أراه أو ألمسه هو موجود. هاي الشريحة ناقصة الشريحة اللي فيها يرى، لأنه ينقصه شريحة في عقله تقول ما لا أراه أو ألمسه هو موجود. يعني ليس شرطا أن الذي لا تراه ولا تلمسه غير موجود. طبعا إيمانك بالغيب يجعلك قادرا على تصديق ما لا تراه عيناك، وتستطيع أن تؤمن بالله تعالى وقدراته حتى لو لم ترها. غير الشيطان مفهوم الأرض فأصبحت تراب وقاع يتصارع عليها الخلق من أجل حكم بعضهم بعضا، وكأن الله لم يصنع حكما إني جاعل، يعني وكأن الله لم يصنع حكما إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة. يقولون تحرر الأرض المقدسة كما يعتقدون في فلسطين، فكيف دخلها اليهود؟ والقرآن يقول محرمة عليهم هذا هو الذي جعل أهل الأرض في قتال. يقولون نحرر الأرض المقدسة كما يعتقدون في فلسطين، فكيف دخلها اليهود؟ والقرآن يقول محرمة عليهم، هذا هو الذي جعل أهل الأرض في قتال. طبعا إيمانك بالغيب يجعلك قادرا على تصديق ما لا تراه عيناك، وتستطيع أن تؤمن بالله تعالى وقدراته حتى لو لم ترها. مركبتنا الفضائية أطلس 3I تعتبر وكالة الاستخبارات الأمريكية نشر أي معلومات عنها أمرا يمس بالأمن القومي الأمريكي، وهذا الكلام رسمي. ترى هذا الكلام رسمي، هم يقولون، هم يعملون به. إيمانك بالغيب قلنا يجعلك قادرا على تصديق ما لا تراه عيناك، وتستطيع أن تؤمن بالله تعالى وقدراته حتى لو لم ترها. مركبتنا أطلس 3I تعتبر وكالة الاستخبارات الأمريكية نشر أي معلومات عنها أمرا يمس بالأمن القومي الأمريكي، وهذا الكلام رسمي. وكالة ناسا الفضائية أشاعت وما زالت تشيع وتصرح أن مركبتنا هي مذنب طبيعي، لكن CIA ترفض أن تعطي أي معلومات عن مركبتنا لأي شخص، وتستخدم تعابير تؤكد أن أي معلومات عن أطلس 3I هي معلومات محظورة عن الناس لأهميتها لسلامة أمن الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية. أعيد قراءة المقطع إلى آخره. وكالة ناسا الفضائية أشاعت وما زالت تشيع وتصرح أن مركبتنا مركبة آل محمد هي مذنب بقيادة صاحب الأمر، بقيادة صاحب الأمر وملائكته. وكالة ناسا أشاعت، الفضائية أشاعت وما زالت تشيع وتصرح أن مركبتنا هي مذنب طبيعي، لكن CIA ترفض أن تعطي أي معلومات عن مركبتنا لأي شخص، وتستخدم تعابير تؤكد أن أي معلومات عن أطلس 3I هي معلومات محظورة عن الناس. تحظرها عن من؟ عن الناس. ليش؟ لأهميتها، لسلامة أمن، من أجل سلامة أمن الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية. ما هذا المذنب الذي تعتبر CIA الحديث عنه أو الاعتراف بأنها تملك معلومات عنه مساو لأسرار حربية متى عرفها الناس؟ انتهك الأمن القومي الأمريكي. مذنب بامتياز، شعب جاهل، يا من لم تصدقوننا بعد، شعب معوق، مذنب بامتياز. شعب جاهل، يا من لم تصدقوننا بعد، شعب معوق. من قال غيرنا منذ أشهر أن أطلس 3I هو مركبة فضائية؟ أنتم عن الأرض لم تعرفوا شكلها إلا من الدلائل، فالدليل هو الحجة والبرهان. صاحب الأمر أرضه الذي ينزع فيها كل غل في القلوب وتصبحون إخوانا. باختصار، أرضه الجنة وليس أرضكم التي هرم سياسي القوي يأكل الضعيف. شعب جاهل، يا من لم تصدقوننا بعد، شعب معوق. من قال غيرنا منذ أشهر أن مركبتنا أطلس 3I هو مركبة فضائية؟ هل هناك من قال غيرنا أن أطلس 3I مركبة فضائية؟ من قال غيرنا؟ لا أحد، نحن فقط الذين قلنا. تصنيف أطلس 3I بأن المعلومات عنه غير متوفرة للناس عبر CIA يقول للناس أنه خطر عليكم أن تعرفوا عنه ما نعرفه. يعني تضمونها على الوادم، تضمونها على ناسكم وشعبكم. اي طبعا، لعد شلون مو يثورون عليهم ويسقط ما في أيديهم من السيطرة والقبضة الحديدية والضحك، ضحك الحكومة على شعبها. والحكومة منتخبة، شعبها منتخبة، والحكومة تكذب على شعبها، ما تعطيها المعلومات الحقيقية حتى تعرف رأسها من رجليها. تصنيف أطلس 3I بأن المعلومات عنه غير متوفرة للناس عبر CIA يقول للناس إنه خطر عليكم أن تعرفوا عنه ما نعرفه، نخاف على الأسواق وانهيارها، ونخاف على معرفتكم ما نعرفه عنه، نخاف أن تعلموا أن هناك جهة ما متطورة أكثر من عندنا، منا نحن الشعب الحاكم للأرض، أمريكا ومن معها. أعيد العبارة لتفقهوا. واحد أحمق يكتب يقول أنت الجاهل. لا، إذا أنت عالم ما تكتب لنا هذا الكلام، ما تقرأ على حضاراتنا كلامك هذا يا أحمق. تصنيف أطلس 3I بأن المعلومات عنه غير متوفرة للناس عبر CIA يقول للناس أنه خطر عليكم أن تعرفوا عنه ما نعرفه. نحن نخاف على الأسواق وانهيارها، لا تنهار الأسواق العالمية الأمريكية، ونخاف على معرفتكم ما نعرفه عنه. نخاف أن تعلموا أن هناك جهة ما متطورة أكثر منا. نحن الشعب الحاكم للأرض، أمريكا ومن معها. هذا هو قولهم. أنتم في شهر رجب شهر تبديل الأرض غير الأرض، وهي حرب مفاهيمية، وهي حرب مفاهيمية بالدرجة الأولى، لا بد من تغيير. وأنتم مقبلين على شهر رمضان، شهر الخليفة آدم. تفاءلوا بالخير بالرغم من الحروب في كل مكان. تفاءلوا بالخير تجدوه بالرغم من الحروب الحاصلة في أيامنا هذه. نخاف أن تفهموا أننا ضعفاء. يعني من ما يقولون أمريكا، الشعب الحاكم للأرض أمريكا ومن معها، شو يقولون؟ يقولون نخاف أن تفهمونا أننا ضعفاء وهناك من هو أقوى منا. وأخيرا نخاف أن تعلموا ما نعلم عن أطلس 3I، ولذلك سنجعل المعلومات عنه محظورة عن الناس. هذا ما تقوله وكالة الاستخبارات الأمريكية، هذا مو كلامنا، هم يقولون هذا الكلام. وما لا تعلمه أمريكا ومن معها أننا عندما نرجع للأرض لن يروننا إلا ونحن عليها، ولا إله إلا الله. وما لا تعلمه أمريكا ومن معها أننا عندما نرجع إلى الأرض، أننا عندما نرجع للأرض لن يروننا إلا ونحن عليها، إلا ونحن عليها. لم يروننا إلا ونحن عليها، ولا إله إلا الله. كبر عقلك، كبر عقلك يا رجل ستقولون، كبر عقلك يا رجل ستقولون. هذه مركبة أمريكية فهم أسياد الأرض، انظر لما يفعلون، لا أحد أقوى منهم. لا والله، لا والله. أي نعم، أي نعم. قولوا أنها لهم، قولوا أنها لهم، ونقول أنها لنا آل بيت محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. هي الآية من السماء التي وعدكم ربكم بها، نسيتموها؟ سنقرئك فلا تنسى، سنقرئك فلا تنسى. إليك الآية. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. إن نشأ ننزل عليهم من السماء آية فظلت أعناقهم لها خاضعين، وما يأتيهم من ذكر من الرحمن محدث إلا كانوا عنه معرضين. فقد كذبوا فسيأتيهم أنباء ما كانوا به يستهزئون. الآية من 4 إلى 6 من سورة الشورى المباركة. الآية من السماء المرتبطة بذكر محدث، أي وحي، أي بمعنى وحي جديد. والكذب فقط سيستهزئون، والكذبة فقط سيستهزئون. استمعوا لتسجيلات الفيديو الثلاث التي تحدثت عن هذا الموضوع. دليلنا من الغربيين وليس قولنا الأول، وأنا عرضت هذه الفيديوهات عليكم قبل فترة.
Unlock your stay for less with app-exclusive prices. Download the free Booking.com app today.
This AI tool is better than 11 Labs for one-time cost. Now you can create long-length audiobooks without ever worrying about running out of credits.
سأعرض عليكم
You
الفيديوهات.
can instantly generate your own desired voice from just a simple prompt, just like this.
Now create any voice, any tone. Just describe and hear it in seconds.
Add emotions too. Calm, excited, sad, or anything you need.
You can create an exact replica of your own voice and use it across different languages, just like this.
Arabic, Hindi, or in any language you want. Vous voyez, je parle en français.
اصبروا علي
Ça
دقيقة.
sonne toujours comme moi. أهلاً، اسمي ليلى وأنا متحمس.
You can also turn your voice into any other style or tone you want with the built-in voice changer feature, just like this.
This is my real voice and this is how I sound like.
In one click,
استمعوا لتسجيلات الثلاث التي تحدثت عن هذا الموضوع. دليلنا من الغربيين وليس قولنا الأول. هذا الفيديو
I'll be honest, I've spent a lot of time staring into the void, trying to make sense of the signals we get from the deep darkness, but I never expected the most chilling signal to come from a piece of paper in Washington, D.C. on December 31st, 2025, while most of the world was looking toward the new year. The CIA, the world's most powerful
quietly dropped a hammer on the mystery of interstellar object 3I Atlas. Through a formal response to a FOIA request, reference F202600231, the CIA has officially elevated this comet to a matter of supreme national security. This isn't just a refusal to share data. It's a full-scale information blackout using a legal weapon known as the Glomar response. They are telling us they can neither confirm nor deny that records of this object even exist, because the mere fact of their interest in it is currently and properly classified. Think about the weight of that for a second. We've been told for months that 3I Atlas is just a rock caught in the solar drift, but the CIA just invoked the National Security Act of 1947 to protect what they call sources and methods used to monitor it. I can't shake the feeling that we are no longer talking about astronomy, but about an active intelligence operation. Welcome back to the cosmic unknown. What gets me about this whole situation is the sheer speed of the escalation. This object was only discovered in July 2025, and in less than 6 months, it has gone from a scientific curiosity to a secret that could supposedly cause damage to the national security if revealed. It makes you wonder what they saw in that silence that we weren't allowed to see. We have the public face of NASA showing us grainy images, while behind the scenes, spy agencies are the doors and pulling the curtains tight. Some researchers are calling this a black swan event, the kind of discovery that changes everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. Today we are going beyond the star charts and into the heart of a classified mystery. We are going to deconstruct the CIA's own words to understand why a visitor from another star system is being treated like a state secret, and why 2026 might be the year the truth finally becomes too heavy to hide. Here's the part that always messes with my head. In the world of government transparency, there is a specific kind of no that is much louder than a regular refusal. It's called a Glomar response. If you ask a government agency for records and they don't have them, they just tell you, no records found. It's simple. It's boring. It ends the conversation. But when the CIA responds to John Greenwald's FOIA request by saying that they can neither confirm nor deny the existence of documents regarding 3I Atlas, they are doing something very specific. They are telling the world that even admitting the CIA is interested in this object would reveal a secret that is vital to the safety of the United States. I don't know if that idea is right, but it's hard not to wonder why an agency that tracks terrorists and foreign spies is suddenly so protective of its data on a space rock. The Glomar response was born in the Cold War, used originally to hide the existence of a secret underwater salvage ship. It's a tool of espionage, so when it gets applied to 3I Atlas, we have to ask, what is the CIA seeing that the rest of us aren't? If this was just a comet, there would be no sources and methods to protect. You just point a telescope at it and share the pictures. But the CIA's letter, dated December 31st, 2025, explicitly mentions that the very existence of these records is classified. They are essentially staring into the void and refusing to blink, even as the public demands to know what's out there. Some researchers wonder if this is because 3I Atlas isn't just moving on its own. If the agency has detected signals, or a metallic composition that shouldn't be there, or a propulsion system that defies our understanding of physics. Admitting those records exist would change the world overnight. The CIA's job isn't to advance science, it's to manage threats. And by refusing to even acknowledge they have files on this visitor, they are telling us, without saying a word, that 3I Atlas is considered a potential threat. It's the ultimate bureaucratic silence. But as we dig deeper into the legal justifications they used, the picture starts to look even more like a thriller than a documentary. If the existence of the files is a secret, then what does that say about the object itself? What really gets me is the specific language they used in document F-2026-00231. They didn't just give an excuse, they built a legal fortress around 3I Atlas. They cited section 3.6A of Executive Order 13,526. This is the order that governs how national security information is classified. It's the same law used for nuclear secrets and military battle plans. When the CIA invokes this, they are stating that the disclosure of information about 3I Atlas could reasonably be expected to cause damage to the national security. Damage. That's a heavy word to use for a piece of ice and dust drifting through the solar system. Unless, of course, it's not ice and dust. I can't shake the feeling that the damage they are worried about isn't from the object hitting Earth, but from the public finding out what it actually is. They also cited the National Security Act of 1947 and the CIA Act of 1949 to protect sources and methods. Now, think about that for a second. What methods does the CIA have that NASA doesn't? NASA uses public telescopes. They use sensors we all know about. But if the CIA is using secret surveillance satellites, things designed to look at top-secret military bases to track 3I Atlas, then revealing those images would show our enemies exactly what our spy tech can do. Or maybe the source isn't a satellite. Maybe the source is something already out there in the darkness. It's debated among some analysts whether the CIA has access to deep space sensors that the public doesn't even know exist. By locking down the data on 3I Atlas, they are protecting the fact that they can see things no one else can. But there's a darker possibility. If the source of the information is the object itself, if it has been communicating or if we've intercepted its data, then the National Security Act is the only thing keeping that reality from the evening news. One hypothesis is that the CIA isn't protecting us from the object, but protecting their own advantage. If 3I Atlas represents a leap in technology, the first nation to understand it wins everything. It's a silent arms race, happening millions of miles away in the void. The more I read these legal codes, the more it feels like the government is treating this interstellar visitor as a captured asset or a foreign adversary, rather than a scientific discovery. And as the object continues its drift toward Jupiter, the urgency behind these classifications only seems to grow. Why the rush to classify everything before the year ended? What happened in those final weeks of 2025 that made the CIA decide the public had seen enough? If you look at the physical evidence, the CIA's behavior starts to make a terrifying kind of sense. We aren't just talking about a rock. We are talking about a pattern of anomalies that point to something artificial. First, there's the composition. Early reports suggested 3I Atlas has an incredibly high nickel content with almost no iron. In the natural world, that's almost unheard of. But in the world of engineering, that's the recipe for a high-performance superalloy. If this thing is made of processed metal, it's not a comet. It's a craft. Then there's the MAVEN incident. The MAVEN probe was orbiting Mars when 3I Atlas made its pass. It was perfectly positioned to get the best look at the visitor. And then, suddenly, NASA lost contact. The probe just died. 1 minute it was sending data. The next, it was a piece of junk in the darkness. Some astronomers argue it was a solar flare or a technical glitch. Others push back, pointing out that the timing is just too perfect. Did 3I Atlas defend itself? Or did the CIA cut the feed because MAVEN saw something it wasn't supposed to? And let's talk about the trajectory. A normal comet follows a predictable path based on gravity, but 3I Atlas has shown subtle, unexplained shifts. It's moving toward Jupiter, aiming for a specific point in the giant planet's gravitational well. It's a maneuver. It's a correction. When you add the strange metallic signature to a probe accidentally going dark and a controlled flight path, you don't get a comet. You get an interstellar traveler with a purpose. I don't know if we'll ever get the full picture, but here's the part that always gets me. While the CIA is locking down the official data, amateur astronomers are still looking up. People like Dan Bartlett have captured images of a tail that doesn't look like ice sublimating in the sun. It looks like a jet. An anomalous exhaust from a system we don't understand. The government can classify its own files, but it can't classify the sky. At least not yet. The tension between the official silence and the growing mountain of evidence is creating a black swan moment for humanity. We are looking at the first potential evidence of a non-human intelligence, and our response as a species is being dictated by a spy agency's legal department. It's a surreal reality to live in. We are drifting through the void alongside something that might change our history, yet we are being told to look away for the sake of national security. The arrival of 3I Atlas was supposed to be a moment of wonder, a chance to see something from beyond our little corner of the universe. But as 2026 begins, that wonder has been replaced by a heavy, government-mandated silence. The CIA's response to the FOIA request is a reminder that we live in a world where the truth is often considered a liability. They won't tell us what they know, but their refusal to speak is the loudest signal we've ever received. It's hard not to feel small when you realize that the most important discovery in human history might be sitting in a digital vault, protected by laws from the 1940s. We are left to watch the drift of 3I Atlas from a distance, wondering if the next time we hear about it, the news will be unclassified, or if the darkness will simply swallow the story whole. I can't help but think that we deserve more than a Glomar response. We deserve to know who or what is visiting our home, and sometimes I think we underestimate how quiet the universe can be. But maybe it's only quiet because someone else is holding the microphone. What do you think is hidden in those classified files? Is it a threat, or is it a promise that we aren't as alone as we thought? Let me know your theories in the comments. It's in these conversations that we keep the search for truth alive. If you want to stay on the edge of the void with us, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. It helps us keep the light on in the darkness. If you feel like supporting our journey even further, you can become a member of the cosmic unknown. Every bit of support helps us dig deeper into the mysteries they want to keep hidden. Until next time, keep looking up. The truth is out there, even if it's currently classified.
استمعتم إلى الفيديو؟ هذا الفيديو الأول. هذه الفيديوهات الثلاث التي تحدثت عن هذا الموضوع. دليلنا من الغربيين وليس قولنا. الفيديو الأول انتهينا من عنده. الثاني استمعوا وأنصتوا لعلكم ترحمون. يلا.
I said it in my last video about interstellar object 3I Atlas. I said, NASA, please explain this. All the anomalies, but I was specifically saying it about these symmetric, completely, perfectly symmetric jets that appear on the Hubble images until the latest image of December 27th, and they appear since July. But now, there is something else. And this is a headline from Harvard professor Avi Loeb, who's really into this and is basically listing all these anomalies for us. He says, because the official entities basically say it's a comet, nothing to see here, NASA hasn't even given us any statement regarding the anomalies. They haven't said, oh, this is BS, oh, this doesn't exist. No, nothing. Silence. They haven't tried to explain them. They're just all behaving it's natural. So Harvey Loeb says, if 3I Atlas is a comet, indeed, right? Why would the CIA guys neither deny or confirm or nor confirm the existence on records on it? This is going to be a very interesting video, as you can imagine, just by the headline, guys. Let's dive into this. So the recent image that we have from December 30th, we see interstellar object 3I Atlas taken with the Virtual Telescope Project facility in Manciano in Italy. And we see the prominent anti-tile jet clearly observed in the direction of the sun. That's towards the lower left in the image. So what Avi Loeb is saying, and I'm quoting him quite often today, he says that basically 3I Atlas right number almost like 16, 17 of unexplained anomalies that are not seen in regular comets, that just are not seen. They defy physics. They're not. They should not be there. Let's say it like that. We've talked about this. I'll put all this. Check out the anomalies. We've talked in detail about them. That alone is already fascinating. But what he says is, well, one could have hoped that these puzzles, anomalies, would kind of trigger a healthy scientific debate about the nature of 3I Atlas. But for some reason, it's not. Nothing coming from NASA. They have reported more about their spacecraft Maven that seems to be lost shortly after it took images of 3I Atlas, right? And they don't know what's happening. So instead, now we know, he tells us, the case is officially closed by. They closed it without any discussion on the puzzling nature of these anomalies. Why not? This would fascinate probably a lot of young people that would maybe then want to become astronomers, go to university, study. No, nothing. Why not? This is what NASA is there for, right? Why not discuss this? Anomalies, these anomalous features, as we know, and that's what we've talked about the most, is this anti-tail, this jet that is directed towards the sun, and how it is directed towards the sun, right? And it appears before and after perihelion, which is absolutely strange. Perihelion is when 3I Atlas was closest to the sun. And now we've talked in my last video about this geometric alignment within 8 degrees between the rotation axis of 3I Atlas at large distances, and this mysterious sunward direction of the anti-tail. It has an alignment, that sunward tail, alignment within 5 degrees of the orbital plane of 3I Atlas with the ecliptic plane. And then we have materials. The prominence of nickel relative to iron in the gas of 3I Atlas that 3I Atlas is shedding. What's the explanation for this? Because what he says, this could be reminiscent of industrially produced nickel alloys because normal comets don't have this chemical structure. He's not saying ship, but if you discover that it has that, you're looking for an explanation if you're a scientist. So why are there no explanation? Here it comes at the end of the year, the last day, December 31st, 25, the CIA, the US Central Intelligence Agency, has applied to a Freedom of Information Act. It's called FOIA, F-O-I-A, inquiry by John Greenewald Jr., scientist, that it can, and they said this, I'll show you that letter, neither deny nor confirm the existence or non-existence of records related to 3I Atlas. So, what? Look at this letter here, right? The letter is a final response to our November 12th Freedom of Information Act request seeking any assessments, reports, or communications maintained by the Central Intelligence Agency referencing 3I Atlas or interstellar object 3I from June 1, 2025 to present, right? They say we completed a thorough review of your request and we determined that in accordance with section 36A or executive order, blah, 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 CIA can neither confirm nor deny the existence or non-existence of records responsive to your request. The fact of the existence or non-existence of such records is itself currently and properly classified and is intelligence sources and methods information protected from disclosure by Section 6 of the CIA 1949, blah, 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 blah. Therefore, your request is denied. Why? Of course, right? So this is always the thing. I don't want to say there's conspiracy theorists out there, but they could debunk this very quickly. NASA could just say, we don't know why it has these anomalies, but we are 100% sure it's a natural comet because blah, 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 blah. But they're just like, it's a comet. They haven't even in their press conferences indicated that there is something strange going on, right? The cyanide, the anti-tail, the acceleration, that it changed its trajectory when it was hit from our side, now directly towards Jupiter's Hill radius, and all these other anomalies, just nothing. So of course this is fueling a debate that they might not want to have, right? Very, very strange. And Avi Loeb says, and I'll quote him here, he says that this information is treated as sensitive enough to be classified by the CIA is surprising. It is, guys, right? Because it's just a normal comet. Why do we need to classify that? And he also further says, it's surprising given that NASA officials stated decisively at a press conference on November 19th, 2025, that 3I Atlas is definitely a comet of natural origin. So, and he further says, and yeah, he's absolutely right, that was November. He said, if this conclusion was clear all along on everyone within government and academia, as NASA officials presented the case, then why would the CIA treat the possible existence of records dealing with a natural comet as sensitive enough to be classified? So if they say it is classified, then there's something there, right? So he says, I'll quote him again, and I'll quote him a lot, because basically for him is that the most easy or simple explanation that would give us, well, some explanation of why the CIA responded in that way to that FOIA request is, as he says, that some government officials wished to verify that 3i Atlas is not a black swan event, posing a potential threat to society, even as COMET experts regard such a possibility as highly unlikely. By multiplying a small probability for the existence of a threat with its high impact factor on society, the sober conclusion is that such events must be taken seriously and monitored. Yeah, absolutely, right? And he references the Trojan horse story, right? Nothing to see here. It's just a wooden horse. But if you had investigated it further, you would have known what was about to happen once you opened the gate for that Trojan present, that Trojan horse, right? And he criticizes the CIA. He criticizes them and NASA for not accounting to the fact that this thing has enough anomalies to, if it was artificial, and he gives it a percentage of like 40%, I think, that they're not investigating it enough. And he references, he says CIA had miscalculations in guarding the risk from the events that unfolded on September 11th, 2001, and on October 7th, 2023. Boom. He's giving them a punch, right? I like that guy, I have to say. I really like it. And so, yeah, what he wants, he says, right? Under such circumstances, he would expect, and I agree with him, let me know what you think, that officials at NASA would like or would be encouraged to deliver the likely scientific explanation, right? While at the same time, the serious consideration of a black swan event by the CIA was hidden from public view in order to prevent panic from taking hold for no good reason when we look at the events in the past, right? He calls it a wise policy for mitigating societal unrest or instability of financial markets. For example, yeah, you have to halt financial markets when events like 9/11 happen, because there's lots of traders out there. They're just waiting for that to short the market and make a shit ton of money, pardon my language. And you don't want that. You don't want that market to collapse or any instability. That's their holy cow, right? So he calls it social unrest is the danger, instability of financial markets at a time when the reality of a black swan event is still regarded as highly unlikely. So, yeah, let's talk about the public's trust, because giving out a reply like this for a piece of rock, a comet, that does not really build trust in these institutions. And what I'm reading from your comments, NASA has lost a lot of trust from you, because it took them so long to release these images of 3i Atlas, where many people were suspicious. They said it was the lockdown, but I think it was the University of Arizona, because they collaborated. They should have the images as well. They could have released them earlier. No, could they? So, he says, Avi Loeb says, I quote him, in order to maintain the public's trust, the CIA would prefer not to raise a false alarm, like the shepherd who repeatedly shouted wolf, so when a real wolf came, no one believed him. Yeah, we don't expect them that they say, oh my God, we're all going to, life is ending, the world is over, 3i Atlas, the aliens are coming. But, you know, just look at this thing and discuss, especially in a time right now where UFOs, everyone talks about them, right? All these documentaries from government personnel, former insiders that say that that the US has spacecraft, alien spacecraft in possession, including bodies, and that the bodies look like frogs. I've seen these documentaries from former CIA, NASA, and government officials. I ran the probability through AI, and I said, what's the probability that like 20, 30 former high-ranking government officials come together and tell these stories? What's the probability that this is a fake, right? And the probability was actually close to zero. But who knows? I can't make up my mind. I'm always thinking, well, you hear that, oh yeah, ooh, beautiful, and here's the video. Shouldn't we be like, oh my God, right? They're here. But for some reason, I don't know. I'm like, 3i Atlas gets me more excited. But if this is alien and the aliens are already here, why worry about that piece of rock, space, junk, spaceship, comet, whatever the heck it is, right? I don't know. Let me know how you feel. But, he tries to explain it. So by neither confirming or denying that this is the best way to keep the investigation of Black Swan events hidden from the view. So given that this interpretation would be valid and correct, then interstellar object 3i Atlas basically would be the first case of an interstellar object that is not coming from our solar system, which the neither confirm nor deny response was adopted purposely by the intelligence agencies. Interestingly enough, what Abdall mentioned is that, he has developed like a loop classification scale for the threat level of interstellar objects, for the probability that they could be like alien spacecraft, alien tech, or something like this. And this was not just something that he just invented and put it out there and say, take it as valid. He mentioned that his scale was quantified in 3 actually peer-reviewed papers that he has also co-authored with Omer Eldadi, Gershon Tenenbaum, and Oem Trivedi. And you can look them up. He's linking them on his website. And he has, and that's what he says, and that's interesting. Once he has developed that scale, that he went to policymakers, politicians, and officials and said, hey guys, here, that's the scale. You should really look at that. You should look at the possibility that 3i Atlas might be a Black Swan event. And now he says the response of the CIA might be eventually proof that actually someone was listening to him and listened to his request. And maybe they're looking into this, right? So interesting, guys. I'm going to be on the pulse of this for you, trying to find out if we learn more in the future, because now's the time that we're gathering data from observations when it was closest to Earth. It takes a while, and then, we will have to wait and see. It's on its way to Jupiter, and during the time frame from here until mid-March, we will get more data. So subscribe, guys. Please like and hype this video. Here is the playlist if you want to learn more about that. But if you want to know about the doomsday clock, where we will lose access to space, and we will, it's just a matter of time, and it could be any second now, which is kind of crazy. Really, really crazy. The Kessler syndrome. Check out the video here. This is not fiction. This is real, and everyone should know about this. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in a second.
استمعتم للفيديو الثاني، بالعافية عليكم. عندكم هاي الأخبار؟ لو ما عندكم هاي الأخبار ما تتابعون الأخبار. إذا تتابعون الأخبار موجودة بالأخبار. هي الفضائيات دا تطيها. منين هذا؟ من طلعنا من عندهم، هم دا يعترفون، هم دا يقرون عليكم، مو من عندنا احنا. هاي هم اعترافاتهم هم. وإليكم الفيديو الثالث.
Welcome back. The CIA just invoked national security protocols over a comet. Let me say that again. the Central Intelligence Agency used the same classification language they reserve for nuclear weapons and spy satellites to avoid discussing a chunk of ice supposedly drifting through our solar system. On December 31st, 2025, when researchers filed a Freedom of Information Act request about 3I Atlas, an interstellar object currently near Jupiter, the CIA responded with 4 words that change everything: neither confirm nor deny. This is the Glomar response. It's what you say when even acknowledging a file exists would reveal state secrets. It's what they said about stealth submarines during the Cold War. It's what they're saying now about a comet. 6 weeks earlier, NASA told the world this same object is definitively natural. A press conference. Absolute certainty. Case closed. But if it's just a comet, why is the CIA treating it like a threat? Why are we getting 2 completely opposite responses from our own government? Because the data doesn't match the story. 3I Atlas is doing things that violate the physics of how comets behave. And right now, it's approaching Jupiter, our last chance to observe it before it disappears back into interstellar space forever. So let's look at what's actually happening. The anomalies started piling up almost immediately. First, there was the anti-tail. In typical comets, solar radiation pressure and the solar wind push material away from the sun, creating the iconic tail that streams behind the comet as it moves through space. But 3I Atlas displayed something different. A prominent jet of material directed toward the sun, not away from it. And this feature persisted both before and after perihelion. That is not how cometary jets are supposed to work. Standard models describe outgassing as being driven by solar heating, with material being expelled from the sunlit side and creating jets that generally point away from the sun, or at angles determined by the comet's rotation. An anti-tail jet, one that defies the radiation pressure and points sunward, suggests a mechanism that is either far more complex than our current models account for, or something else entirely. Then came the alignment issues. When researchers measured the rotation axis of 3I Atlas at large distances from the sun, they found it aligned to within 8 degrees of the sunward direction. Let's be clear about what this means. The orientation of a comet's spin axis is essentially random, determined by whatever collisions and gravitational interactions shaped its history over millions or billions of years. There is no physical reason for that axis to preferentially point at the sun unless some mechanism is actively stabilizing it in that orientation. The probability of such an alignment occurring by chance is small. Not impossible, but small enough to raise eyebrows.
This AI tool is better than 11 labs for one-time cost. Now you can create long-length audiobooks without ever worrying about running out of credits.
And it gets stranger. The orbital plane of 3I Atlas, the flat disk within which its trajectory lies, aligns to within 5 degrees of the ecliptic plane, which is the plane defined by Earth's orbit around the sun and the general plane in which most planets in our solar system orbit. Again, interstellar objects come from random directions in 3-dimensional space. There is no reason for their orbital planes to show any preference for aligning with our ecliptic unless there is some selection effect we do not understand, or unless the object's trajectory was not as random as we assume. If you want to follow this story as it develops, make sure you're subscribed, because 3I Atlas isn't done surprising us. These geometric coincidences are not fatal to the natural comet hypothesis, but they are uncomfortable, the kind of details that make you wonder if there is a missing piece of the puzzle. Let's look closer at the data, because there is one more anomaly that stands apart from the geometric oddities, and it involves chemistry. When astronomers analyze the light emitted by the gas surrounding a comet, they can identify the specific elements and molecules present in that gas by looking at the wavelengths of light being absorbed or emitted, a technique called spectroscopy. For 3I Atlas, the spectroscopic analysis revealed something unexpected. Nickel was unusually prominent relative to iron in the gas cloud. Now, nickel and iron are both common in cometary materials. They are products of stellar nucleosynthesis, and they exist throughout the galaxy in rocky and metallic bodies. But the ratio matters. In natural solar system comets, the relative abundance of these elements follows predictable patterns based on the primordial composition of the solar nebula and the processes that formed comets in the early solar system. What made the 3I Atlas measurements unusual is that the nickel-to-iron ratio was reminiscent of industrially produced nickel alloys, the kind of ratios you might see in stainless steel or other engineered materials designed for specific properties like corrosion resistance and structural strength. To be absolutely clear, no one is claiming that 3I Atlas is made of stainless steel. The point is that the chemical signature does not fit neatly into the distribution we expect from natural astrophysical processes. Could there be some exotic formation pathway in another star system that produces this kind of signature naturally? Possibly. Could our measurements be affected by observational bias or incomplete data? Also possible. But here is the crucial detail. When you combine this chemical anomaly with the geometric alignments and the anti-tail jet, you start to accumulate a list of features that individually might be explainable, but collectively create a pattern that resists easy interpretation, where the scientific method should kick into high gear. You have an object displaying multiple properties. The next step is not to immediately conclude it is artificial. That would be wildly premature and scientifically irresponsible. But the next step is also not to declare the case closed and move on. The next step is to ask hard questions, to propose multiple hypotheses, to gather more data, and to engage in the kind of rigorous debate that science thrives on. So, what does this actually mean? Why did NASA officials stand at a press conference on November 19, 2025, and state decisively that 3I Atlas is definitely a comet of natural origin? Full stop. End of discussion. The most charitable interpretation is that the comet hypothesis remains by far the most likely explanation, and in the absence of extraordinary evidence, scientists default to ordinary explanations. Comets are weird. They do unexpected things. Every time we study a new comet up close, we discover behaviors that challenge our models. Make 3I Atlas usually weird, a statistical outlier that happens to combine several rare features. And over time, as we study more we will see similar objects and our models will adapt. That is a perfectly reasonable scientific stance, but it does not explain the CIA response. If the community is confident that this is a natural object, if the data unambiguously points to a origin. If there is no serious possibility of this being anything other than an icy rock from another star system, then why would the CIA invoke the neither confirm nor deny protocol when asked about records related to 3I Atlas? That protocol is not used lightly. It is a tool for protecting information that, if disclosed, could harm national security or reveal
Business meetings, presentations. Boost your business English with ZeroPan. Download it now.
تعرفوا ان فريد الأطرش شتم سامية جمال وانه راح لانور وجدي يوم فرحه على ليلى فوزي وقال له خد بالك منها الست دي كانت هتبقى مراتي. طيب ازاي شادية انتقمت من فريد الأطرش بنفس الطريقة اللي سامية جمال انتقمت بيها منه؟ وهل فريد الأطرش هرب من شادية بعد ما اشترت فستان الفرح؟ طب تعرفوا ان نبرة الحزن في صوت فريد الأطرش وراها ترانيم الكنيسة وانه ادمن القمار وخسر بسببه كل فلوسه؟ هل عبد الحافظ منع فريد الأطرش من حضور فرح بنت المشير عبد الحكيم عامر؟ وهل ام كلثوم
يا ام كلثوم يا فريد الأطرش وين رحنا؟
Welcome back. The CIA just invoked national security protocols over a comet. Percent. Low enough to make the coincidence noteworthy. So the Green Bank telescope was pointed at 3I Atlas, and it listened. Specifically, it monitored the radio frequency band from 1 to 12 gigahertz over a 5-hour observation window between Oro 4:15 and Nur 9:15 UTC on December the 18th, 2025. The result, no technological signal was detected. The report confirming these null results was published recently, and several reporters reached out for comments, expecting perhaps that this would be the final nail in the coffin for any notion that 3I Atlas could be anything other than a natural comet. But here is where we need to be very careful about what the absence of evidence actually tells us. This contradicts what we previously thought about how such searches should be interpreted. The absence of a radio signal over a 5-hour period in a specific frequency band pointed in the direction of Earth does not, in fact, tell us very much. Think about the timescales involved here. 3I Atlas is on a journey that takes it through the entire solar system, from the outer edge of the Oort cloud through the inner planets and back out again. That journey takes approximately 16,000 years. The object itself has been traveling through interstellar space for potentially millions or even billions of years. Now imagine that this object, if it were technological, were transmitting a signal back to its senders, wherever they might be. That signal would take tens of thousands of years to cross the Milky Way galaxy. There is no possibility of a two-way conversation, no real-time communication, no feedback loop. Any signal sent from 3I Atlas would be a one-way message, and the time it spends in our solar system is a tiny fraction of its total journey. Under these circumstances, would we expect continuous transmission? It seems unlikely. Broadcasting continuously would require enormous amounts of energy that would need to be generated somehow and sustained over a journey lasting eons. A much more efficient strategy, if you were designing such a system, would be to transmit in short, compressed bursts with a small duty cycle, only activating the transmitter at specific intervals or under specific conditions. Moreover, we have no reason to expect that such a transmission would be directed at Earth. If the object is reporting back to its senders, the signal would be beamed toward wherever it came from. not toward random planets it happens to pass along the way. And even if it were transmitting in our direction, we have no idea what frequency band it might use. The 1 to 12 gigahertz range is where we typically look for signals because it happens to be a relatively quiet part of the radio spectrum, a natural window for communication. But that assumption is based on human reasoning about what makes sense for communication. An alien civilization might use entirely different frequencies, modulation schemes, or communication protocols that we would not recognize even if we were looking directly at them. So the 5-hour observation window that captured nothing tells us that 3i Atlas was not broadcasting a detectable radio signal toward Earth in the monitored frequency range during that specific time period. That is all it tells us. It does not rule out the possibility of transmissions at other times, in other directions, or at other frequencies. A proper observing program, if the goal were to truly determine whether the object is transmitting, would need to monitor it continuously or at least intermittently over a much longer period from multiple directions across a broader range of the electromagnetic spectrum. That is a resource-intensive undertaking, and it has not been done. So, where does that leave us? We are at a moment where multiple threads of evidence and interpretation are pulling in different directions. On one hand, you have the scientific consensus that 3i Atlas is most likely a natural comet, albeit one with some unusual features that will require further study to fully explain. That consensus is based on decades of experience with comets, on models that have been tested and refined, and on the principle that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. On the other hand, you have a growing list of anomalies that do not easily fit into those models. A CIA response that suggests someone in the government is taking the possibility of a threat seriously enough to classify any related records, and a set of observational efforts that, while valuable, are far from comprehensive. We also have the context of previous interstellar visitors, particularly Oumuamua, which displayed its own set of anomalies, most notably an unexplained acceleration that could not be accounted for by outgassing or any other conventional mechanism. The debate over Oumuamua's nature has not been settled, and now we have a second interstellar object with its own set of puzzles. Are we seeing a pattern? Are interstellar objects inherently more diverse and strange than we anticipated? Or is there something else going on that we have not yet understood? At this point in the story, I want to hear from you. What do you think is the most plausible explanation for the anomalies surrounding 3i Atlas? Do you think the scientific community is being appropriately cautious, or are they closing the door on alternative hypotheses too quickly? And what do you make of the CIA's response? Is it a reasonable precaution, or does it suggest they know something we don't? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, because this is exactly the kind of discussion that pushes science forward, not just in academic journals, but in the broader public conversation about how we explore and interpret the universe. The story of 3i Atlas is not over. Right now, the object is still making its way through the outer solar system, and it is heading toward a close pass near Jupiter. This is significant for a reason that might not be immediately obvious. Jupiter, because of its massive gravitational influence, acts as a kind of shepherd for the solar system. Its hill radius, the region within which its gravity dominates over the sun's, is enormous, and objects passing through that region can experience significant gravitational interactions. If 3i Atlas were to deploy any smaller objects, if it were to release probes or subcomponents, those objects could potentially be captured into orbit around Jupiter, becoming new moons of the giant planet. This is not science fiction. We know that some of Jupiter's moons are captured asteroids or other bodies that wandered too close and got trapped by the planet's gravity. If there were any truth to the hypothesis that 3i Atlas is more than just a comet, if it were carrying any kind of technology or payload, the vicinity of Jupiter would be a logical place to deploy it. Jupiter offers gravitational capture. It offers a stable environment. It offers a vantage point for long-term observation of the inner solar system. The question is, will anyone be watching closely enough to notice? The current plan, as far as publicly available information indicates, is to continue monitoring 3i Atlas as it moves outward. But there has been no announcement of a dedicated mission to observe its close approach to Jupiter in detail. The suggestion has been made by researchers who take the possibility of a black swan event seriously, that we should be looking for exactly this kind of behavior. We should be checking whether 3i Atlas does anything unusual as it passes Jupiter. We should be scanning for any objects that might be released, any changes in trajectory that cannot be explained by gravitational interactions alone, any signals or emissions that might indicate activity. Unless we check, unless we commit the resources and attention to watching this object carefully through the final stages of its passage, we might never know if this swan is white or black, to borrow the metaphor that has been used. A white swan is the expected outcome, the natural comet hypothesis confirmed, the anomalies eventually explained by better models and more data. A black swan is the unexpected, the possibility that this object represents something we have never encountered before, something that challenges our assumptions about what is possible and what is out there in the galaxy. The implications of this debate extend far beyond the specific case of 3i Atlas. We are entering an era where the detection of interstellar objects is becoming routine. Advances in telescope technology, particularly the Vera Rubin Observatory, which is set to begin operation soon, will dramatically increase the rate at which we discover these visitors. We might go from detecting one every few years to detecting dozens or even hundreds per year. Each one will offer a snapshot of the conditions around other stars, a window into planetary systems we cannot otherwise observe directly. But each one will also force us to ask the same questions we are asking now. Is this just a rock? Or could it be something more? How do we distinguish between natural and artificial? What level of evidence do we require before taking the possibility of extraterrestrial technology seriously? These are not just academic questions. They have implications for planetary defense, for space policy, for international cooperation in monitoring potential threats, and for the philosophical question of whether we are alone in the universe. If we dismiss every anomaly as a natural phenomenon without thoroughly investigating, we risk missing something profound. But if we treat every unusual object as a potential alien artifact, we waste resources and credibility on false alarms. Finding the right balance is one of the defining challenges of this era of astronomy. There is also a broader conversation happening here about transparency and trust. The dissonance between NASA's definitive public statement and the CIA's classified response highlights a tension that exists in many areas where science and national security intersect. How much should the public be told about potential threats that are considered unlikely but not impossible? When does caution become secrecy, and when does openness become irresponsibility? These are questions without easy answers, and they are questions that will become more pressing as our ability to detect and monitor objects in space continues to improve. The current approach, if the interpretation being offered is correct, is to manage public perception carefully, to communicate the most likely scientific explanation while quietly investigating the alternatives. That might be a pragmatic strategy, but it also carries risks. If the public eventually learns that investigations were happening behind closed doors, if documents are declassified years from now showing that the CIA was taking 3I Atlas more seriously than NASA let on, will that build trust or erode it? The answer might depend on what those investigations ultimately find. For now, we are left with uncertainty, with data that is suggestive but not conclusive, with hypotheses that are plausible but not proven. The anti-tail jet, the geometric alignments, the chemical signature, the CIA's silence, the negative radio search results, all of these pieces fit into a puzzle that we do not yet fully understand. The scientific process will continue. More papers will be published. More observations will be made. Competing hypotheses will be tested against new data. And eventually, we might reach a point where the picture becomes clearer, where the anomalies are explained by natural processes that we simply did not account for, or where the evidence accumulates to a point where alternative explanations must be taken more seriously. Until then, we watch, we measure, we debate, and we remain open to the possibility that the universe is more surprising than we imagined. If you found this deep dive valuable, if you think this is the kind of detailed analysis that deserves a wider audience, please consider liking this video. It genuinely helps the algorithm surface scientific content to more people, and it supports the continued production of these in-depth investigations into the stories that matter. The case of 3I Atlas is a reminder that science is not a collection of settled facts, but an ongoing process of questioning, testing, and refining our understanding. And sometimes the most interesting science happens at the edges, where the data does not quite fit, where the anomalies accumulate, and where we are forced to confront the limits of what we know. As 3I Atlas continues its journey outward, back toward the darkness between the stars, it carries with it the questions we could not answer, the observation would be directed at Earth.
تصنيف أطلس. انتهن الفيديوهات الثلاثة. أعيد ما قرأته أخيرا قبل أن أعرض الفيديوهات. هذا الفيديوهات هذا كلام رسمي يعني. وكالة ناسا الفضائية شاعت وما زالت تشيع وتصرح أن مركبتنا هي مذنب طبيعي، لكن CIA ترفض أن تعطي أي معلومات عن مركبتنا لأي شخص، وتستخدم تعابير تؤكد أن أي معلومات عن 3I أطلس هي معلومات محظورة عن الناس لأهميتها لسلامة أمن الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية. ما هذا المذنب الذي تعتبر CIA الحديث عنه أو الاعتراف بأنها تملك معلومات عنه مساو لأسرار حربية متى عرفها الناس؟ انتهك الأمن القومي الأمريكي. مذنب بامتياز. شعب جاهل، يا من لم تصدقوننا بعد، شعب معوق. من قال غيرنا منذ أشهر أن 3I أطلس هو مركبة فضائية؟ أحد غيرنا قال أحد غيرنا؟ لا أحد. من قال غيرنا منذ أشهر أن 3I أطلس هو مركبة فضائية؟ لا أحد. تصنيف 3I أطلس بأن المعلومات عنه غير متوفرة للناس عبر CIA يقول للناس أنه خطر عليكم أن تعرفوا عنه ما نعرفه. نخاف على الأسواق وانهيارها، ونخاف على معرفتكم ما نعرفه عنه. نخاف أن تعلموا أن هناك جهة ما متطورة أكثر منا، نحن الشعب الحاكم للأرض أمريكا ومن معها. نخاف أن تفهموا أننا ضعفاء وهناك من هو أقوى منا. وأخيرا نخاف أن تعلموا ما نعلم عن 3I أطلس، ولذلك سنجعل المعلومات عنه محظورة عن الناس. هذا ما تقوله وكالة الاستخبارات الأمريكية. وما لا تعلمه أمريكا ومن معها أننا عندما نرجع للأرض لن يروننا إلا ونحن عليها، إلا وأننا نحن عليها. لن يروننا عندما نرجع للأرض، لن يروننا إلا ونحن عليها. ولا إله إلا الله. كبر عقلك يا رجل. ستقولون هذه مركبة أمريكية فهم أسياد الأرض، انظر لما يفعلون، لا أحد أقوى منهم. نعم، قولوا أنها لهم ونقول أنها لنا، آل بيت محمد. إن نشأ ننزل عليهم من السماء آية فظلت أعناقهم لها خاضعين، وما يأتيهم من ذكر من الرحمن محدث إلا كانوا عنه معرضين. فقد كذبوا فسيأتيهم أنباء ما كانوا به يستهزئون. الآيات من 4 إلى 6 من سورة الشورى المباركة. الآية من السماء المرتبطة بذكر محدث، أي بمعنى وحي جديد. الكذبة فقط سيستهزئون. نقطة إلى السطر. استمعوا للتسجيلات لو تستمعون، كيفكم تستمعوا لهم ما استمعون، موجودة على الفضائيات وعلى البرامج الأمريكية. هم دي يعترفون بعد شكوا. اطلبوا لنا بطلب عمي معلومات تازة وبلاش. حار ومقسد. ومن باب المراد سلام الله على باب المراد الجوادين صلوات الله وسلامه عليهم وآلهم، من آل محمد السلام، ومنه وإليه يعود السلام. فقط وفقط. تصبحون على خير، وإلى لقاء آخر إن شاء الله. نرفدكم بكل جديد من ربكم وإمام زمانكم. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. يرحمكم الله، يرحمني ويرحمكم الله. تصبحون على خير، وإلى لقاء آخر، في أمان الله وحفظه. سلام.